Okay. Well, this is an adventure, everyone. This is our very first LinkedIn Live event that we're doing from QA Cafe. Kind of digging the format. So, um, the title of this is "Don't Let Your Next IT Purchase Be a Backdoor to Your Security and Privacy Policy," and that title sounds a little scary, but we really wanted to hit on some of the things that you should look for that you might not expect if you're buying a cloud solution, particularly around those that give you the ability to take and record and download packet captures or PCAP files. And Tom here is going to show us why that's so scary. And I'll introduce him in a minute. But why is it? Why is QA Cafe talking about this? Right. So we deal with packets all the time. QA Cafe makes some products you might have heard of in the network testing and network analysis space, including CD Router, Passport, CloudShark. So we've been dealing with packet captures for a very long time, and over that time, we've learned a lot about the reasons why people use them, why they are demanded in general by IT and cybersecurity investigation to do work, right? And now, sort of what they mean as companies are moving more towards cloud solutions, and where those PCAPs end up being taken and where they end up sitting. And what to do about them. This is also the reason why we built Packet Viewer, which is our newest product, which is an OEM solution built for cloud managed network and security platforms so that they can provide a secure wire like a Wireshark like experience around PCAPs with very little development. And we have at least one example of that now. It's coming out on a podcast this week, but it was revealed at Cisco Live that Packet Viewer is used by Meraki's cloud PCAP feature, Cisco Meraki. So that's really big news on our end. Um, so if you haven't met Tom, Tom is our resident packet capture expert because he works with this stuff all the time. He's been in networking probably. Um, I think the last time I read your bio, Tom, it said 15 years, but I think it's way more than that now, right? It's probably
18.
closer to 20. Yeah,
18 now.
18
Yep.
years. And Tom's focused a lot on IPv6 over the years, but also a lot of different network security problems. And we've had him dive deep into some of those in the past, specifically using packet captures. I know we always try at the end of the year. What is it? The hackathon, the
Yep.
KringleCon or whatever.
Yep.
Um, that Sands puts on often has a PCAP challenge, and we'll dive into that. Tom will dive into that. Sometimes we end up putting out an article of what he discovered, but it's all about using packet captures in these contexts of trying to solve network problems and trying to solve cybersecurity problems. But it has some consequences. So I I'm going to turn things over to Tom so he can talk a little bit about where that comes from.
Hi, everybody. Today, I am going to show you a typical analyst's workflow when they're dealing with a PCAP file. And I'm also going to show you some of the sensitive information that you might be able to find in that file after the fact. So to start, let's just review what PCAPs are, what they're used for. A PCAP is a complete record of everything that happened on the network, all the bits and bytes that are sent between um, all the devices on the network. They're really useful when analyzing things like performance. Someone says, I think the network is slow. A lot of times, once you take the PCAP and dive in, you might find it's really not the network. It's an application that's not sending any traffic for some reason. An incident response. If you get an alert that one of your computers was infected with malware, you might need a PCAP to see exactly what happened. What data was exfiltrated by the malware, any other computers it might have infected. And they're also really useful for application development to see how your application is acting on the network um, and more. And when we're trying to solve a problem, it's usually easy to just go to the PCAP. So, Jason, if you could switch my screen.
I will. And while I'm doing that, I did want to remind people this is LinkedIn Live. So if you have any comments, um, type them right into the comments of the LinkedIn Live session, and we will see them and we will talk to them.
All right, so what I have here, well, network captures can come from a lot of different places. They can come from routers, firewalls, load balancers. You might even be capturing all the traffic on your network and storing it somewhere for long-term um, preserving it. So what I've got up on the screen here is a router that supports performing a packet capture. You can see this under the diagnostics menu. And I've got some options here. I can choose an interface. I can limit the amount of traffic. I can also filter traffic. So here I could say, give me the traffic only from this host or only this application. And if you're filtering on something like a 10 gigabyte speed link, you're definitely going to need some filters there. Otherwise, as soon as you start it, your disk is probably going to fill up. But they're also useful for the analyst to home in on a specific segment of the traffic. But there's nothing worse than when you go and you take a capture, start analyzing it, and realize you've filtered out something that you actually need to see. So a lot of times you kind of want to cast a wide net with these filters. And down here, we can kick this off. So if I'm troubleshooting, say DNS maybe, I can see here in this interface some packets. The time, it's an IP packet. I can see the addresses they're going to, and that it's UDP. It's not really a whole lot of information. It's not going to be very useful for me while I'm troubleshooting. So I also have the option to stop this and download it to my machine. So I'm going to download it to my machine and open it up in Wireshark. Wireshark is pretty much the de facto tool for analyzing a PCAP file. It shows all the packets and the traffic being sent on the network, all the bits and bytes, and all of that good information that now I can use to troubleshoot something. And once I've finished my troubleshooting, what I'm going to do is probably close Wireshark and go back to, I'm sure some other incident has happened in the meantime. So I'm on to the next thing. And I've forgotten about this now. I don't know about anybody else. My downloads folder is essentially a junk drawer of anything I've downloaded. Lots of old information. I don't clean this out very often. So that PCAP is likely sitting on my desktop or my laptop for a very long time until I need some more space. Delete everything in the downloads folder. And until then, those PCAPs are probably just sitting there. I've forgotten about them and I've moved on. So if you could switch me back to the slides, Jason.
Sure. And I really love that you're pointing that out, right? So it's like Tom is showing us stuff that a lot of people might already know, but it's very cool that in the process of these examples, Tom's going to be basically acting like somebody who is trying to solve these problems in real time. So it's like you're going to experience things and choices that might people make that are very real.
Maybe not the best choice, but to be honest, that's what
No,
I'm going to do.
but this
Yeah,
is what happens, right? This is what happens.
right. Um, so now we're going to talk about why these need to be secured. And they need to be secured because they contain everything that happened on the network. Um, I can reconstruct transmitted files, conversations, security assets that are supposed to be secure, confidential. Um, I need a specialized application to analyze them that only runs on my desktop or laptop machine. So I can't use a cloud-based application to analyze them. And if I can download them, I'm going to download them. It's pretty much as simple as that. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a PCAP file, and I'm going to show what might end up there. So we're going to look at things like medical data, financial trades, passwords, credit information, things that are important for PCI and HIPAA compliance. Um, and let's dive in. If you could switch me back, Jason.
There you go.
Thank you. All right, so I've got a capture here from my downloads folder, and this has some sensitive information in it. So just dig in and start looking at what we can find in here. Let's start with credentials. So this would be username, passwords, those sorts of things. So Wireshark has a built-in tool called credentials. And if we look at this, what it's doing is scanning the PCAP, and it's looking for any usernames and credentials that are found in the capture. So these might be things like HTTP authentication, Telnet, FTP, and here we can see that there's quite a few packets in here with credentials, with HTTP basic auth, and I see the username. And if I click on one of these, I can actually go to this packet, and since it contains everything, it's not just the username that's in this packet. Down here, you can see Jason's password, his password.
We
It's
would
not
never
really.
do that.
I know Jason would never do that. It's just a placeholder. Sorry to pick on you. So that's one way to find these credentials. Pretty easy, one button. Um, it works great for things that Wireshark knows about, um, but you may also have some custom applications that also use credentials. Um, I've got a filter expression, and what this does is filter out. You can kind of see at the bottom. There's 41,000 packets in this capture file, so I'm not going to go through this packet by packet. These filter expressions can show me a subset of the traffic. And here I've got a filter expression for any HTTP traffic that just contains the word password. And it's a post, which means I'm sending it to a server. And if I look at one of these, I can see who we're sending it from, who it's going to, and I can use the follow stream tool. And what this does is reconstructs the entire HTTP stream between this client and server, and just displays it very nicely, very easily. If I'm troubleshooting an application, an HTTP one, this is where I'm going. And here in this post, I can see right there the username and password. So there's a couple quick examples of easy ways to find credentials in a PCAP file. And remember, this is probably on my laptop saved in my downloads folder. All right, so next, let's look at an example of medical data. This would be stuff that you really don't want to leave your network, um, just begging for a HIPAA violation. Um, so Wireshark has the ability to export objects, and it supports this for quite a few protocols: FTP, HTTP, IMF, which is email, your file shares over SMB, TFTP. And what this tool does is it reconstructs an object that was sent. That could be a video, an email attachment. And there's another option here, DICOM, which stands for Digital Imaging and Communications for Medicine. So let's see if there's any DICOM objects in here and what they are. So it did detect one. So it looks like an image storage. And we can take this file and save it from the PCAP. Put that in my downloads folder too. And reconstruct that file that was sent. So in my downloads folder, I have this DCM file. A lot of time, most desktop computers wouldn't have the ability to view one of these, but I did find some free software that will, and we can drag and drop this into this tool. And here we've got a medical image. Probably not something you want sitting on a laptop or leaving your network in any way.
I think that's the scariest one.
That I do too. I don't like that one. All right, next let's look at some credit information. This would be your financial data. Things like PCI compliance are really important when dealing with this in your PCAP file. So I've got a filter expression here that I've saved, which is going to look for email traffic. And this is called a regular expression. It's to match some text. This one matches a credit card number. And we can see we found a packet here with a credit card number in. So once again, rather than digging through all this, I'm going to use Wireshark and follow this stream. So reassemble all the data that was sent and display it in a much nicer format. And right here, this was a test email. but you can see it did detect these credit card numbers. So let's look at some other financial information. We can look at financial trades. So I found this capture here, and this is captured from the NASDAQ Stock Exchange. And we can see a bunch of packets that are UDP, and there's some data in here, but this doesn't really look sensitive to me. It just looks kind of random, and I'm not sure what it is. Wireshark also supports adding new functionality to it through a plugin system. And I've added a plugin for this protocol, and I can enable it. And now this data that didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense before, now it's got NASDAQ in the name. And if I take a look at just one of these, I can see now these random numbers are decoded. It started to make some sense. There's a session. There's an order replace message. And here I can see some information, a timestamp, stock number, how many shares, what price they are. So that information can be found in your PCAP too. Lastly, we're going to look at voice traffic. A lot of voice traffic is being carried over IP networks now. A lot of times you are analyzing this using a PCAP file. So you're looking at things like the SIP traffic to see the messages going through. And once again, Wireshark has a nice tool we can use for this where it will display all of the VoIP calls it detects in the traffic. So here it's found one. I can already see some sensitive information, phone numbers. I'm also able to reconstruct all of the audio that was sent in this capture. Let's look at it from here. These are RTP streams. I seem to have lost my RTP streams. Let me disable this NASDAQ plugin. I think that might be.
Goodness.
Nope.
While Tom is grabbing that, I did want to throw it out there if there's any other examples of the people who are watching of sensitive stuff like that you've experienced. I know at least two of the people on probably have dealt with this on many occasions. There it is.
Yep. So here are the RTP streams, and I can actually play them back. I don't think you'll be able to hear it, but that's the voice call. And maybe I'm troubleshooting something like the call quality. What I'm going to need I'm going to need the RTP streams to do that. And those can be reconstructed and played. And one thing to remember is when you're on hold, those RTP streams are still going back and forth. So I have seen some captures with RTP
Be
streams.
nice to your support people.
Be nice to your support people. And yeah, so those are some examples, real quick, of just some sensitive information that might be saved in this PCAP file that's just sitting in my, drunk drawer downloads folder that I'm bringing with me back and forth to work.
Yeah, and before I
There you
switch
have it.
back, Tom, if you see, Doug had brought up a really good point that a lot of healthcare environments don't encrypt this data. Like to go back to the first example, like it's not. I mean, it's not encrypted. Probably because I imagine there are situations where people who think they're within trusted boundaries don't use encryption on certain applications, right? But
Right.
in addition, when it is encrypted, I did want to talk a little bit to this about how it is still very risky for these things to exist and be floating around, right? Because it's only anyone who knows how to get into them will get into them, right?
Yep. And yeah, a lot of traffic on the internet today is encrypted with TLS, thankfully. But a lot of times, that's traffic on the public internet. Once that goes into a cloud, that TLS traffic might be decrypted and sent elsewhere within the cloud. And maybe that's where I'm taking my packet capture to do my troubleshooting. So that information can still be in there, even if it was encrypted at one point in its journey. you might be able to capture it where it's not.
Right, right. And we talked a little bit when we were thinking about putting this presentation together about how useful packet captures are to hackers anyway, even if there isn't personal privacy data in there, but like having access to them in general to be able to to do worse things later, right?
Yep. Yep.
And
It's
they're
got
the kinds of people who are going to be able to decrypt it.
right. And look at just things like the IP addresses on your internal network. You probably don't
Yeah,
even want that information getting out. Um,
yeah,
or what devices you're using can be gleaned from a PCAP file.
right.
Um,
Or what applications are running, or how often, and at what times, and all that stuff.
all
Yeah,
very useful information if you're trying to break into somewhere.
yeah, sure. All right. I want to come back really quickly to sort of the point of what we're talking about here, right? Um, Packet captures are really, 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 really important to people who are doing um, troubleshooting and investigation. And the question really is, how do you balance those needs versus the reality of what's contained in a network capture to make sure that it's still going to comply with your security and privacy policies? And we generally have three pieces of advice when it comes to this, right? One is use a cloud solution that is designed to keep the captures that it takes within trusted boundaries, right? And for a cloud solution, very often that is the cloud environment that is set up in. Whether or not you are, um, whether or not you're using the one that is entirely provided to you by that solution provider, or if you're using some sort of private cloud and you're deploying that application yourself, make sure that the solution is designed such that when you take a packet capture, to be able to look at it, that capture stays within trusted boundaries. And I understand that probably an investigator's laptop might be able to be considered within a trusted boundary, and there's probably policies around that. But as you can see, it's like, and I'll get to this on my third point, the reality of what people do when they're solving the problem versus what the policy is probably not always going to be the same. Try and find solutions that let you work with that data without the need for external tools. So I know, Tom's using Wireshark here, but in order to use Wireshark, first of all, you have to be allowed to install it, which I imagine is against policy for a lot of organizations. You have to make sure it's up to date. You have to maintain it. It is a separate application, and anytime that you are going to look at that data, the stuff that you're looking at is either local or is on a shared drive somewhere, right? And it's being accessed by that application, um, outside of the cloud solution that you're probably using, right? So I talked about how Cisco Meraki has implemented this. This is one of the main reasons they've done it, right? So um, allowing the user to dive right into the packets um, without the need to download it, without the need to open another application, keeps the user within their user experience and make sure that they have control over what's going where and who's looking at it. And number three is um, use complete solutions, right? So complete solutions, we say, ones that are actually thinking about this and are taking this into account, that help mitigate shadow IT. And I realize that shadow IT is kind of an old term, maybe, um, but it really means the steps that people are taking to solve a problem that are probably against policies and procedures, right? Because they have pressure to make sure that it gets done. So downloading it to a junk folder, uh, when you have a packet capture that contains somebody's brain scans is probably more common than not. And the key here is not to think of it as something that just needs to be better enforced, but to lean into the fact that people are going to do this and provide them with the tools um, that that make it so they don't have to do that, right? So that is it is not their first impulse to do that, right? I was the analogy I always make is about Napster versus iTunes, right? It's like people stopped stealing music when they were given a really convenient way to pay for it. And it's the same with IT people, right? They'll stop going around policies when there's a really easy way to not do that,
Hmm.
right? And again, that is why that's the whole reason we built Packet Viewer, and it is so much of what we learned when we started asking questions to people who wanted to do this, right? Um, what were the biggest concern that came up was their customers' concern around security and making sure that the packet capture data stayed where it's supposed to go, but that they still had access to it. Because we had a lot of people say, "Wow, well, we wish we didn't have to, but we still need PCAPs at the end of the day." And yeah, in presenting this, we didn't actually think about putting this together as sort of a sales presentation or anything like that, as a sales pitch for Packet Viewer. It really is just sort of the story of what we learned while we were considering building it and learning the needs of people who wanted to implement it. So if you are a cloud managed network or security platform provider, and you do want to add this functionality to your product, reach out to us. And if you're on the other side of things, do try to follow those three guidelines and look for solutions that are gonna help mitigate this problem for you. Because the PCAPs are out there, you do really need them, and they contain a lot of sensitive information. All right, I'm gonna leave things open to just a couple other comments. Tom, I didn't know if you had anything else you wanted to say before we sign off.
I think you've covered it, Jason.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Doug was saying about the TLS thing that other solutions and other protocols haven't normalized the same level of awareness that the greater internet has, right?
exactly.
So there is a lot of unencrypted data going around. I think of it in terms of some of the device management protocols that we work with, right? Um, there's operators out there that consider their walled garden a trusted boundary. So they're just transmitting a lot of information in the clear.
Yeah,
And if you're trying to do a packet capture to solve problems in that situation, then you've already crossed that barrier, and it's not necessarily good.
yep.
Um, yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Tom. And this will definitely
Thanks,
be
Jason.
available forever on LinkedIn. Apparently, I love how this works. But we'll also be taking it and distributing it in different formats for all of our loyal fans and customers. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you all again.
Thanks, everybody.